What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Hangout, where we help others move in excellence. And there's been a big dust up across YouTube, especially in the quote unquote prison genre, about Scoop said and Dubs, and then all the reaction videos, and it's just a lot. And and I'm seeing my name pop up in different videos and chats about uh, assumptions about what I think or where I stand on different things, and so I figured I might as well let you guys know myself, and then also some stuff to point out that I think has been missing in some of this conversation, right? At least my opinion. So to start off though, a bit of a rewind, right? And it'll all tie in together. So Scoop's channel, Solid Behind Blue Eyes, which I suggest you guys still subscribe and have the notifications on, because while he left to the feds today, they came and picked him up from New Folsom. He, there's still going to be content dropping on that channel. It may not be his voice very much, except for whatever pre-recorded stuff. And hopefully that changes soon, right? Of course, but there will still be content about CDCR and corruption and everything else. So stay tuned to that channel. I will, and obviously my prayers go out to to his family and him, and I hope everything works out well, right? So he has that channel, and he'd had it for a while, and didn't get a whole lot of traction, just to be quite honest with it. And then but they're figuring out from scratch, right? And a lot of lives, a lot of videos. So then he goes on Outlaw News. I think it's Outlaw TV or Outlaw News, something like that. Shout out to him. Goes on his channel, picks up some subscribers, picks up a little bit more traction, and keeps doing videos. And then we get in touch. And we get in touch, and we start having conversations. And after about a week, because I'm sure he has to do his kind of due diligence, right? He says, "Hey, let's do some content together, man. Let's jump on YouTube." And we have been talking every day, right? Messaging every day, and fairly long conversations. Sort of fitting them in wherever we could. And I was like, "Yeah." He goes, "I think we can, we can have a powerful conversation. We could open up a lot of people's eyes. We can, we can have some substance, right?" And I agreed with them. But I wanted to wait a little bit because I also had to do my own form of due diligence. And I don't mean background checks on prison stuff or whatever. That's not my world anymore. But more learning who he was as a person, figuring out who he was best as I could, and what his point of view on stuff was, and kind of what his agenda was, what his goal was before jumping on a channel. I could have ran with it. I could have ran with it right away. Oh, look at this guy with this label, bam, and probably gotten a fair amount of views from it. But that wasn't my goal, right? My goal was to put Brant Daniel on more so than necessarily Scoops, and so we keep talking, and we actually develop a rapport. We develop something of a friendship with each other, that I'm thankful for to this day, and that I expect to continue. And so in that, I'm like, okay, yeah, man, let's run this. Let's do it. And we wind up doing a live. He gets a little more traction on his channel after that. He winds up getting monetized. And in that live, we talked about his case. We talked about all kinds of things. A handful of you guys have seen it. It hasn't done nearly the numbers of some of the other videos where he's talking about the YouTubers, but I think I'm going to take segments out of there and post them as videos. But people have gotten me like, "Hey, I heard he was on your channel. When I look at your channel, I don't see it." It's because they're lives, they're not videos. So you got to click on the little lives tab, and then they'll show up. There's, I don't know, I think 3 conversations that we had. But nonetheless, we do that, and it's eye opening. It's enlightening. It shows another side of him. A side that I had come to know in our conversations privately, but now that other folks get to see too, and a wider audience. In all of our conversations, hours and hours and hours worth, man. If I had a nickel for every time it was, you have 60 seconds. Hey, run it back. You got time for one more? I would be a wealthy man. We talked a lot, and my kids were in the car sometimes, and my old lady's in the background sometimes, or whatever. But I think he got to enjoy some of that also, because the sounds of life out here, right, which he has been deprived of, I think pretty unjustly, to be honest, for 31 years. So Anyways, in all of our conversations, all total, maybe 20 minutes was devoted towards other folks on YouTube, right? 5 minutes here, a message there, whatever. As he's kind of hearing more names and hearing more spiels and having some questions and I'm giving my feedback and input on people. And so, but for folks that done time, right, especially folks that did time in the 90s, he already knows, right? He already knows. And so in all of that, my point is, it was not conversations preoccupied about other people on YouTube, right? He expressed the same opinions to me that he did online. It's not as if he changed his mind somewhere along the way, but it just wasn't the crux of what we were doing. And then he goes on Texas Prison Stories, right? Shout out Tim Snow, and is asked about other YouTubers and offers an opinion. I didn't ask him about other YouTubers when he was on my channel because I didn't feel like I needed to, right? For one, I was a GP inmate in the California Department of Corrections from the day I set foot in there to the day I set foot out. I know what people in there think of folks. And so I just didn't really see the need in asking necessarily. And I'm not saying that to take shots at Tim Snow for asking at all. It's content. It works numbers wise. Obviously there was a big interest in it. So, more power to him and his channel too. Like, to each their own, right? There's different ways to go about this stuff. Also though, and in particular, like with Dubs, I always knew I knew from when I first started watching Dubs, which is right around the time I first started watching YouTube, that he did not parole off some good yard. Okay. He talks about being validated. He talks about being a lifer. He talks about getting a date, and he talks about coming home. As somebody who was in the California Department of Corrections and was validated, I know how that happens. And I know the sequence, right? Now, I don't know the particulars. I know what everybody else has heard, and Scoops elaborated on that a lot. And that's all the same stuff that I heard when I was in there too. That's what everybody in the GP hears. That's what everybody that's in the SHU hears. And from a prison standpoint, okay, and Scoops made this point. From a prison standpoint, you're either GP or you're not, period. And the circumstances, the story, the why, the how, the particulars don't matter. You don't get a chance to explain yourself. You're either GP or you're not. And if you're not, you're trash, period, point blank. That is the mindset of, I think, everybody in the general population, or everybody that's, validated in the shoes back then, or whatever. That's how we all believe. That's how we all think. That's how you're supposed to think. That's the norm. So none of that is unusual to me. None of that is groundbreaking, or like, I don't get necessarily the wow factor of it, because I think it's fucking common sense. I knew that, like I said, about Dubs when I first started watching him, and people would get at me over time and ask me, hey, why don't you do this video? Look, there's this piece of paper that says this. There's this piece of paper. How come you don't do videos about Dubs? I have always said, and I will stay saying this, my rationale was because I didn't feel like, I had never heard him say he was active or he paroled active. I don't feel like the content I've seen of his is promoting gang activity. I understand other people disagree. I get that, right? And his use of the word legends and this and that, and it's not a word I use, but I think my vision is clouded by my own personal experience. So maybe I don't see quite the same thing as other folks do when they watch. But I'm not watching for that, So anyways, out here in the streets, and Scoopy said, I watch Dubs' channel sometimes, right? But at the same time, here it is. This is what people say about him in this situation. I'm not in there, right? So I believe the same way. I felt the same way. I drew the same lines in the sand. That's what you're supposed to do. I don't think it's inauthentic from Scoops or anything else. But it's just all very normal. That's just all normal. I'm not in there. I haven't been in there for a long time, and I'm thankful for that. And so I don't apply those same things. And some folks stay out of prison for a long time, and they do apply those things, and that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. I'm not suggesting that you shouldn't. I have really loosened up who I would communicate with and that kind of stuff, in particular with YouTube and early on. And I wind up getting burned half the time, so kind of like jokes on me and learning lessons. But nonetheless, I don't have to live by it. I'm out here, right? I different standards for me. It's whatever standards I choose to set. And and so that's why I didn't get into that stuff. Uh and I get the thing with Dubs of him not explaining. So let me clarify another part. When I did wind up talking to Dubs, right, which was a few years after I'd been seeing his content and had, like I said, already reached the same conclusion that Scoops reached without having to fucking talk to anybody. Uh, I wound up having a conversation with him, and he gave me the rundown. He told me more than what he has said on YouTube. I'm not going to get into what that is. That's not what I do. I don't come on here and reveal my personal conversation with somebody like, oh man, you told me this, and try to get them caught up, right? Like I said, in my opinion, he hadn't lied. There were sections of his story he won't talk about, but that's his call. Um, but then he gives me his explanation. And is it plausible? Is it true? Yeah, I take the dude at his word because I have no reason not to, right? And whether he's telling me the truth or not, it has no bearing on my life. It has no bearing on the lives of anybody that I know or anybody that I care about. So I don't invest that much energy in it. It's not that fucking serious to me. Shit like that was serious when I was in prison. It would be serious if I was out here pushing a line. It would be serious if I was still in the lifestyle. Absolutely. But I'm not. So it's not. Right? And that's for him to talk about if he ever chooses to. And I understand with him not talking about it, it opens up the floodgates for people to throw all kinds of stuff out there. And I've heard some things that I know are not true, because I know folks that have done time with him. I've heard some things that are true. I've heard some stuff that I don't know. I wasn't there, and no way to really know for sure. But again, I watch his content for the content, right? Because I see value in some of his content. And so I watch that. And there's other videos he does that I don't watch because I don't see value in it, right? Uh, that's just what it is. It's not that serious. It's YouTube. And so does he bring some of this on himself by choosing not to talk about certain things? Yes. But is that his right to do it? Sure. And you're going to get pushback. And then you got to deal with people throwing all kinds of stuff about shower shoes in the yard and all this other shit, right? But it is what it is, and that's his burden to bear, so to speak. That's his choices. It's his channel. This is my channel, and that's how it works. Now, in terms of communicating with people, all this stuff of like, there are people who believe if you're a content creator and I make a video about somebody, you need to make that video too, or you need to back my play. And I have fallen into that in YouTube in the early days. And again, it never worked out well for me, And that doesn't mean I came on here and lied about people. I don't come on here and lie. But it does mean that I got caught up in stuff that I didn't need to be caught up in. And that sometimes I would get caught up defending people who then turned around and came after me. Like, it just became messy. And I'm not real into messy. To be quite honest, I try to not do that stuff. Now, again, pulling covers or whatever, if you want to call that messy, then okay, fine, guilty as charged at times. But you set yourself up for that, in my opinion, when you come on here and bullshit and promote a lifestyle and then you didn't stand up under it. Again, I know some people say that that's what Dubs is doing. I don't agree, but if you do, then you do. That's on you, right? I talk to a lot of people. I communicate with Tim Snow. We chop it up. We talk. Him and Dubs don't hold each other in a high opinion. I'm well aware of that. So is anybody that's watched Texas Prison Stories or Dubs' channel, right? It's fucking clear as day. That has nothing to do with me. I'm not part of whatever they have going on. And when I call Tim and talk to Tim, it's not to talk about Dubs. When I call Dubs, it's not to talk about Tim. I have my own relationships, my own communication with people. Sometimes I'm able to bridge some gaps or help folks maybe get a better understanding, and sometimes not. Sometimes I try, sometimes I don't. It all depends on a certain, the situation. But I see people like, oh, bro, how dare you over here in Tim's chat and Dubs' chat, and I'm getting messages from people like, oh, you're playing both sides. No, I'm not on anybody's side. I do my content on the Homie Hangout, right? I got another channel too, but I haven't been doing content over there. We'll see what I do with that. But I do my own content and I stand on my own 2 feet. YouTube is not a team sport to me. That's not how I roll. Okay. I have rolled like that before. Yes. I don't any longer. And it's not as if I just stopped now. So I watch content that I think is interesting or valuable or entertaining. And I watch content by people who I would never have a conversation with. I have conversations with some people that I would never hang out in person with. I hang out in person with some people that have YouTube channels that I hardly ever do content with. Like, it just all varies. But all this attention, I think, and I'm going to wrap it up with this, has been overshadowing what I think is the bigger story, right? You have a guy who at 19 years old with no felony background was supposedly in a situation where a shotgun went off. Well, the shotgun did go off, right? Shotgun goes off in the direction of 3 people from about 10 feet away. It's buckshots. If you've ever shot a shotgun or watched it on YouTube or whatever, you know that to miss 3 people from 10 feet away with a 12 gauge, like, you have to try hard to not hit anybody with anything. It's ridiculous. But that's exactly what happened here. The gun goes off close to 3 people. None of those 3 people get hurt. Scoop gets arrested, charged with 3 attempted murders, which is overcharging to the highest degree, right? But then has an attorney who's like, oh no, man, we're going to fight it. You're going to beat it. All this other stuff. The DA in the closing argument to the jury is telling the jury, hey, you know what? You find this guy guilty. He's going to go to prison for a couple years, learn his lesson, and learn that he can't be doing this kind of stuff. What ultimately happens? He's found guilty at trial and given 3 consecutive life sentences. 3 consecutive life sentences for essentially a nonviolent crime. I think that's a story. I think that's important for people to know, right? That's insight into how this stuff works. Then what happens? Well, now a 19-year-old with 3 life sentences, your points are going to be through the roof, right? So he goes to High Desert, one of the most dangerous prisons at the time, and opens it up, which is why it was one of the most dangerous prisons. And as he's sitting there, and this is all stuff that he talked about on my channel, as he's sitting there and he's looking at some paperwork from somebody down the way, they have unmentionable offenses against women. Women or women and children, one or the other, or both. Either way, still not acceptable. Okay? And this person had priors for that same behavior. And they had 18 years. They had to do half of the 18 years. They were getting out in 9 years. And they caused true harm to people, right? True harm to people, and had done it repeatedly. And they were going to get another chance at life. Meanwhile, this 19-year-old, who's at the time 20 or 21, society throws him away, tells him, we don't ever want you out here. You're going to have to die twice before we think about, you getting a date. What does that say to somebody coming into prison and not having hope? I didn't have much hope when I came into prison, and I only had a 10-year sentence, and I didn't have any hope of coming home or anything else. That stuff developed later. And thank God I had a release date, because that's what spurred some of that stuff. Had I had 3 life sentences, game over. Game over. And I think that's true for a lot of people, but very few people have to experience that. That's one of the most ridiculous over sentences that I've ever heard of. But so he goes and does what he does to this guy who did what he did to women. And the guy gets what he has coming in my book, and therein starts a journey, right? A journey of shoot terms, a journey of violence, a journey of, hey, I'm going to make my lane here, okay? But you can't miss, I don't think you can look at that and ignore the 3 life sentences for not hurting anybody. To top it off, the DA turns around and goes to his DRB hearing 20 years later and says, I always wondered if it was really you or if it was your little brother. Wow. This lady that took you to trial told the jury you get a couple years. You end up getting 3 life sentences, run back to back. And now she's saying, I wasn't even really sure if you were guilty at the time. I don't know. But now that you got these tattoos and you got these labels, man, we must have got the right guy. One is not connected to the other, right? He wasn't affiliated on the street, right? So, anyways, I just think all the medical stuff he's been through, and hey, if you want a surgery, then you need to debrief, and I'll give you another back surgery. The shady stuff, the COs taking his mail and giving it to other people with unmentionable offenses, right? And then say, hey man, this guy's going home and better watch out for your wife. Like, there's so much that Brant 2 Scoop Daniel can bring to YouTube and bring to your guys' awareness. And I'm not opposed to him saying what he said about other YouTubers, right? Like, that is also part of his voice. And I get it. You're sitting in there, you're the quote unquote boogeyman, and all these other people talk about the boogeymans. I don't think all channels are the same. I don't think all channels do the same thing. But you're talked about, and now here's a chance to have your voice heard. So I'm not faulting Scoop for what he said, and nothing of the sort. What I'm saying is, we're so fixated on that. Did you hear the rest of what he said? It's not an either or. It's not like, let me pretend like he didn't say this about Dubs so that I could listen to it. You can hear it all. And if you don't want to watch Dubs' channel, don't watch it. If you're one of those people who feels like, man, I was played and misled or whatever. Again, if you've done time in California ever, I call bullshit, right? Then if you were misled, you're just an idiot. But I know a lot of people watch these channels that didn't do time in California or didn't do time at all. And so maybe you didn't get it. And now that you've heard this, maybe that changes your view. Okay, cool. Right? Like, to each their own. I watch channels I want to watch. And if I don't want to watch, I don't watch it. It's really not that big of a deal to me. It's all free will. It's all up to you. Right? But can we not forget and not ignore all the other stuff? Because I think in the grand scheme of things, that stuff, in my opinion, has more value, is more relevant to the broader community than the particular status of a guy on YouTube that most people knew already, and just because he don't want to talk about it, it's like I said, man, that's my thoughts. You guys let me know what you think in the comments, right? Am I tripping? Am I off base? I will link to the videos that I did with Scoop in the end of this, right? So you guys can go check those out. And again, shout out to everybody, right? Shout out to all the content creators. Shout out to Scoop and his family. I hope everybody's getting their bag and doing what they want to do. But if you're really trying to learn, there's places you can do that. And there's videos where you can do that. And I would encourage you guys to check it out. And go back on his channel. He talks about a ton of stuff in older videos on his channel that I think is really enlightening, man. So there you have it. That's my thoughts. I don't expect to address this situation again. But who knows? We'll see. Let me know what you guys think in the comments. Help others move in excellence. That's what homies do. Help yourself at the same time because you're worth it. Help your community because they need you. You guys take care.